This wasn't your average cruise. No set rules, no normal way of doing things. And despite these unknowns, it quickly became one of the best travel experiences of my life. Imagine this, an entire cruise ship filled only with people who actually wanted to be there for the same reason. No random passengers, no awkward dinner conversations. Just one big group brought together by one extraordinary idea. I met my friend Will a few years ago when we were both speaking on a Fred Olsen cruise to northern Norway. A few months later, he got in touch with me to tell me what he was planning, and to be honest, I thought he was winding me up. Charter a cruise ship? That's something rock stars do, not astrophotographers from the northeast of England. But he wasn't joking, and he sent me a photo of the signed contract to prove it. Then came the question, would I come on board as part of his team? Absolutely. And so it was a few months later I found myself boarding the Ambassador Ambition, but not for a regular Ambassador cruise. Instead, this was something totally unique, a full ship charter dedicated to the night sky. Over the next 9 nights, we sailed with almost 1,000 of Will's followers into the North Atlantic in search of clear skies, looking for the Aurora, the Milky Way, and perhaps even a comet. That was the hope, at least. But somewhere along the way, something incredible happened. Hundreds of people from far and wide boarded as strangers and left as lifelong friends. This is the story of how we took over a cruise ship.
Please önska den farewell, everybody!
On the very first evening, Will was introduced on stage to a rapturous welcome, followed by a fantastic reception for the rest of us too. We walked on to Wave, completely unaware of the part we'd play over the coming days. Early the next morning, I headed out on deck for a walk and some exercise. Suddenly, I heard a shout. It was Taz, the wildlife expert on our team, already hard at work. She'd spotted dolphins, and by the end of the day, the team had counted more than 200. This stretch of water between the inner and outer Hebrides is perfect for spotting marine life. So if you're ever sailing north from Liverpool, make sure you're out on deck.
Beautiful!
As for the cruise experience, well, at first everything felt familiar, yet slightly different. Ambassador's crew ran the cruise just as they normally would in terms of the bar, the housekeeping, the restaurants, and so on. But it was Will and his team who provided much of the onboard entertainment and enrichment. The buffet, the restaurants, the live music, they were all there as usual. But the focus on the night sky and photography was never far away. Even the jigsaw puzzles in the library were Aurora themed. Now, as the first day went on, the differences really did begin to show. The photography workshops, something you don't ordinarily get on a cruise, were packed. There were queues out of the door. Such was the demand that even I jumped in to help people with iPhones, while others from the team did the same. We decided right then to schedule extra sessions throughout the cruise. I told everyone to go outside that night and practice, as you have to do with nighttime photography. You can explain settings and so on as much as you like, but it's only when you're using them out in the cold and darkness that it sticks in your mind. Now, it was at this point that I and many other people started to get a little bit hungry. It was lunchtime after all. Now, the onboard food was excellent, and that, I think, was a real surprise for many of the first-time cruisers. And if I'm honest, a little bit of a surprise for me too. Now, Ambassador is one of the more budget lines that you can sail from the UK, but the food is absolutely not a budget offering. Dinner in the main restaurants was consistently great, and allergies were well catered for. There were 2 fixed dinner sittings, but since our crowd wanted to be out when it was dark, the second sitting had plenty of space. The buffet, on the other hand, was always busy, but rarely too busy. It was towards the end of this first day at sea that the biggest difference from a regular cruise soon became apparent, as I headed outside with many others to see what we could see in the night sky. Because Will had chartered this cruise ship, he'd been able to arrange special permission for most of the deck lights to be turned off, not just for an hour like on some other cruise ships, but for the whole night, for most nights on the cruise. I've never seen that before. The idea, of course, was to give us the best possible conditions for observing the night sky. And boy, did it do just that on that first night. These stars were out in force, and what a clear night it was, so much so that we even saw the Milky Way with our own eyes. No Aurora yet, but we hoped for more to come. It was a great start. The next day it was time for a port call, but not in Norway. Our first port was in the Faroe Islands, somewhere I'd wanted to visit for years now. Twice before, my planned visits to the Faroe Islands had been cancelled due to bad weather and rough seas, so I was thrilled to wake up and see us sailing into port. Third time lucky for me. We docked not in Tórshavn, but in Runavík, a small town few cruise travellers have heard of. I joined an excursion to Tórshavn to explore the historic Tinganes Peninsula and then onto the fishing village of Kirkjubø. It's known for its turf-roofed houses and these dramatic ruins of St. Magnus Cathedral. It was a striking sight in such a tiny hamlet. Back in Runavík, I had time for a wander and found more curiosities than I expected. Small shops, local art, and a lovely park in the town centre. But before long, it was time for us to head back to the ship, because Will had notified us that he expected some Aurora activity that night, and we were to be ready. Cloud cover permitting, of course. Now, after the sail away from the Faroe Islands, we headed east towards Norway, and Will's ship-wide announcement about the possibility of Aurora sent hundreds of people out on deck for the rest of the night. Having worked with many astronomers at sea over recent years, I can honestly say that Will's ability to forecast the Aurora is second to none. And this night, he proved it yet again. Later in the evening, he suddenly piped up, "Hey guys, 25 minutes, be here, look up." Well, 25 minutes later, this happened. That's what we want! That's me shouting, by the way. I'm sorry, I can't help it. When there's an Aurora display like that directly overhead, I just get so wrapped up in everyone's excitement. The cheering, the joy, it was what everyone had come to see. I was thrilled, Will was thrilled, and to be honest, I think he was more than a little relieved.
Honestly, it's been incredible seeing the Aurora at its best. You can see the Aurora low on the horizon, but have it right above you. Seeing the corona is the absolute dream. It's one of the rarest types of Aurora you can see, and I'm just absolutely buzzing that people were on deck, ready, and they saw that display. I'm so happy for everyone.
With that bucket list item now ticked off for many people, thoughts now turned to Norway, and that's where I came in. With 3 ports in the next 3 days, I was suddenly the most in-demand person on the ship, with questions about anything and everything to do with Norway all day long. It was relentless, but I loved it. The next morning, it was time for my introductory Norway talk in the Palladium Theatre. But after the late night of Aurora hunting, coupled with the double whammy of having the clocks go forward an hour, I was not expecting many people to make it for the 10 a.m. session. There's nothing worse as a speaker than an empty room, so I was relieved with a few minutes to go when people suddenly started filing in. By the way, I've been speaking on cruise ships for 3 years now, and it's something I love to do. You can find out more about that at davidnikel.com, where you'll also find my newsletter, The British Cruise Traveller, full of stories like this, and my best travel tips for your next cruise, whether it's your first or your 50th. After the talk, I was flooded with so many questions. David, where are we going again? David, what can I do here? David, where can I buy this? That we just decided to host a Q&A session in the afternoon for people to come along and ask their questions, which went really well. It was amazing to see how many friendships were forming on the ship. Now, there were hundreds of solo travelers on this cruise, and yet I almost never saw anyone sitting alone. A huge part of the reason for this came from the Facebook group that Will had set up before the cruise. Now, often when I speak on a ship, a passenger has set up a Facebook group for guests and maybe gets 25 or 50 people into the group chatting, sharing advice, tips, and getting to know each other before the cruise. But in this case, because this was a charter by Will, he was able to communicate with everybody before the trip and get everyone into the Facebook group. So we had almost 700 people in the Facebook group. That was the majority of guests, and the difference that made to communication was incredible. It worked wonders for building community on the ship, and that's something that Will picked out as one of his highlights, along with something else that I was delighted to hear.
The best thing is that everyone's on board. You know, not as a pun, but they all know what to expect. I felt that from the beginning, people just had their trust in me and knew that we would get them to the best places or get them up on deck at the right time. But I think probably what's been the absolute surprise for me actually is because I've been planning the stargazing side of it and the sea days, I kind of forgot about the ports, And then when we woke up and you see, whoa, it's incredible, breathtaking scenery. And then you just think, oh my God, like there's that whole side of it as well. And seeing people wandering around, in town and climbing up the mountains, having the best time. I think that was just a whole part of the cruise I kind of forgot about, but it's just been amazing. And I am really happy for everyone.
Now, I love the look on people's faces the first time they sail into a Norwegian fjord, but I was nervous about the weather we might encounter in mid-October. Thankfully, our arrival in Åndalsnes was breathtaking. There was fresh snow on the mountains, crisp air, and ideal visibility. Most guests took the Romsdal cable car up to the top of the mountain that overlooks the town, and not a single one regretted it. Even those who hiked up on foot, which did take a lot longer than expected, came back beaming. Now, I've taken the cable car several times over the years, so instead I chose to join a bus tour of the Rauma Valley, where we saw just some spectacular examples of Norwegian nature and what makes this part of Norway in particular so very special. The next day brought Ålesund, one of my favourite cities in all of Norway, and another wonderful day. Then came Bergen, where of course it rained, but that's Bergen. It's part of the experience of the west coast of Norway in October. Now, as we left Norway behind, our focus once again turned upwards to the night sky. Will organised one final stargazing session, and just about everyone came out on deck. Because so many people were going to be making their way outside, we left the lights on until everyone had found a spot. Then came the moment. The lights went out and the night sky revealed itself once again. It was a beautiful moment. The starry sky was nothing short of breathtaking. Now, a lot of people even saw Comet Lemon from the front of the ship. It was difficult to see with the naked eye, although I just about managed it. I got a picture on my phone camera, and our professional photographers in the team also managed to capture this wonderful image for those people who couldn't quite make out the comet in the sky. The Milky Way was back above us one more time, and it was just a lovely evening out on deck with a really nice atmosphere. The Aurora, well, we had a little flicker later in the evening, but it wasn't to be. However, we had that spectacular show earlier in the cruise. So I think it's fair to say that most people were very happy with what went on up in the sky on this cruise. Now, as we left Norway and sailed back to Liverpool, my work as the Norway guy was essentially done. So that meant I finally had a chance to relax. And so did Will, who'd worked relentlessly to make this last week and a half happen. Before disembarking, I caught up with him one last time to ask the question everybody on board wanted to know the answer to. Will, are you going to do this again?
I think it would be silly not to do it again. I would like to do it again, maybe a few years later. I'm certainly doing smaller groups on Faroe ships, 30, 40 people. It'll be a very intimate experience. I'll be teaching photography, doing talks. So definitely not on this scale, absolutely not on this scale. But what I am doing is a part charter for solar eclipse with Ambition Ambassador. We're going to be taking folks to see solar eclipse by the coast of Greenland. I think I've got 14 cruises planned in 2026. So full charter, we'll see.
That, of course, got me thinking too. I do spend a lot of time cruising the coastline of Norway, after all. So what do you think? Should I even consider chartering a cruise ship one day? Or maybe lead small groups on someone else's cruise? I'd love to know what you think of this idea down in the comments. And if you are considering visiting my adopted home on a cruise, there is a lot you should know before you go. So check out this video next for all my best tips and advice on visiting Norway on a cruise. I've made all the mistakes, so you won't have to.